It's an interesting thing about literary voices is once you get it, it sort of dictates the novel. It tells you what the novel's going to be about, and it puts you in touch with the world you're writing about. Sometimes you feel an expansion of knowledge as though suddenly you know this place, and it's because of the voice. That's the only time when writing verges on being a little bit mystical, is when you get a literary voice and you feel a kind of Vedic connection, and suddenly you're able to write something that you didn't think you could write before. The rest of writing is very pedestrian and difficult, and either athletic or arduous. But getting the voice, sometimes you feel this brief moment of being sort of swept away, and that was very much the case with the Virgin Suicides. I was home visiting my brother in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and started talking to his babysitter, the babysitter for my nephew. And she told me that she had tried to commit suicide, and all her sisters had. I don't know why she divulged this to me, but she did. So I was curious about it. I tried to ask her some questions about why, and she couldn't say anything. She just said we were under a lot of pressure. So the book started, as many books do, with a kind of question and curiosity about something that seemed unlikely and amazing, but you had no idea how it ever came to pass. I remember writing a bit of it on actually a cruise down the Nile. I hope this is true and I'm not making this up. I went on a small cruise on the Nile, and I wrote the beginning of the Virgin Suicides on that trip. Two things came together with writing the book. First, I had the idea of a group of sisters who committed suicide, but I didn't have the point of view and the idea that it was going to be told by a larger consciousness, a first-person plural voice, and that's what I came up with when I was on the Nile cruise. And I wrote the first sentence or so, and that was the beginning. I didn't really know if it would be a novel. I didn't know if it would be published. I hadn't published anything before. I'd written a couple of aborted novels, so I was used to them flaming out, and I was, ready for that to happen again. I didn't realize until many years after writing the Virgin Suicides why I wrote the Virgin Suicides. I think psychologically, emotionally, the real influence was the experience of growing up in Detroit. While I was growing up, the city was becoming depopulated. There were the riots. All the buildings were falling into decay. They're closed up. They were, burned out. My grandfather's bar was torched and burned. So, growing up there, you just saw things giving into entropy. It left in me a sense of evanescence, that things are impermanent. And the story of these girls who die so young, the way their disappearance haunts the narrator of the book, that's really the way I feel about Detroit and growing up there. I wrote 2 hours every night, and then on the weekends I would spend 4 hours. Each book that you write, you swim a long way from the pier at a certain point. You just don't know what's going to happen. And I guess if I learned anything with the Virgin Suicides, I just learned that if you keep going, you'll figure out how to shape the thing. I lost my job in the middle of writing the book, so I had certain practical, reasons to finish this book. I think I might have just learned a little bit more about perseverance. I got the title very, very early. I think I had it almost simultaneous with the first paragraph. With your first book, you don't want to name it like Joe Bascom, something like that, or like Red. You don't want it, because no one knows who you are. You got to at least have a title that someone would say, "What is that?" Even if they don't like it. It didn't, you don't feel any different when you're writing because you published a book. You don't feel any more confident. You always kind of end with a feeling of dissatisfaction of what you've done. What can you do next? Don DeLillo said once that Your first book is kind of a gift. You write it, you don't know how you wrote it. It just kind of comes out, and it's the second book where you teach yourself to be a writer. I think that's true. You write your first book in a great state of innocence. You're not anxious about it. You don't expect that anyone's going to like it, read it, or that it will be published. You're just doing it because this is what you want to do. And so you're ignorant of the publishing process. You're not thinking someone will review it. There's nothing. It's very nice. I try to get back in that state of mind when I'm writing now. It's difficult, but it is the most pure and blissful state of writing is in total anonymity, just with something that you're doing because you want to do it.